All right, we are now joined by Kade McClure. Kade, thanks for taking a couple minutes tonight and sit down talking with us kind of about your road to playing at Louisville and where you are in professional ball right now. So we just appreciate you coming on with us tonight.
Yeah, man, absolutely. I'm excited to kind of just get to talk a little bit of cards baseball, man. It's been a while, been a few years removed, but it's still something that's obviously so near and dear to me. So I really look forward to it.
Definitely, we appreciate you having you on. But one thing before we get into baseball, we're right in the middle of the beginning of a new era in football, and Jeff Brom's first game and a half are underway. We're sitting here watching the Murray State game, and it looks like Louisville's up about 28-0 right now. You threw out a tweet a little bit ago about Jamari Thrash is the truth, and from what we've seen so far, he's the real deal. What do you think about the Cards football team?
Yeah, dude, that Jamari Thrash guy, he is electric, man. He's fun to watch. I'm excited. I'm excited to see a new era. I think the Brom hire is obviously something that they've been trying to pull off for a couple of years, but man, having a Louisville guy, from Louisville, is it now their head coach? I think that's awesome. I think hopefully the fan base can kind of get behind that, and obviously did a great job in the transfer portal and is kind of his short turnaround from getting hired. But man, I hope that some high school recruits can kind of see what he's putting together and they can start landing some big guys because we desperately need Louisville football to be where it was, whatever you want to call it, 5, 6, 7 years ago to kind of get back to that level. But it's fun to see the people back in the stands tonight and just the hype around the program. I know they don't have like a crazy, tough schedule, but man, if they can roll off 8, 9, 10 wins this year, that'd be awesome for that program.
Yeah, we all know football's the driving force behind all of this.
Yep.
It's it makes the money, so we get that. And you commented on the stands. I'm not there tonight, but if you look on TV, there's probably more people in the stands tonight than we've seen in a game in the past couple of years. So it's just refreshing to see that there's been life kind of injected back into the program.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I saw a tweet out there from one of the reporters that said like this, they were expecting the largest post COVID crowd tonight. So that's awesome. I know there's always been those early games in years past where it's we're supposed to win and it's not too filled out there, which is kind of depressing to see. But this is a game that obviously we're supposed to win. To see a pretty good crowd is exciting, knowing that man rolling into ACC play they shouldn't have anything less than what a Murray State crowd looks like. So
Yeah, definitely. I think there's going to be a lot of
yeah,
momentum, as the schedule gets more difficult as the season goes on. But let's go
sure.
ahead and transition into baseball and kind of take us back to your high school career. You played football and basketball as well as baseball. Was there any desire to play either other sport in college, or was baseball kind of the only thing you were focused on in college?
Honestly, I love basketball. Basketball's like even till probably still to this day, my favorite sport to play. My dad played in the NFL for a few years, so football was something that was always a part of, my upbringing. And my dad obviously really wanted me to play football in college. Just the baseball route kind of seemed a little bit more definite at the time, so I gave it up my senior year, and just in terms of some possible high school draft stuff, and just didn't want to risk any injury. So just stayed with basketball and baseball through the last year of high school. But yeah, I mean, I looked at possibly playing both at some smaller schools. My freshman year of college, I actually didn't throw a ton, and I was kind of frustrated, and I felt like, man, I picked the wrong thing. I should have played basketball, and I thought about transferring actually I was going to transfer to Akron and play basketball and baseball. And like a week before, I was kind of really looking at having to make a decision timeline wise. Akron's baseball program folded. It was gone. So I was like, man, thank God I did not make that decision. But I do love basketball, but kind of just baseball seemed to kind of be my best shot of getting a chance to play in college and potentially after that.
Yeah, I'm glad that you kind of touched on your dad there because that was the first part of my next question for you. Your dad had a pretty legendary career at Bowling Green, finished 10th in Heisman voting in 1985. Very storied college career, ended up going into the NFL for a couple seasons. What kind of role did your dad have in the recruiting process and just the overall making of you as an athlete?
Yeah, for sure. And not only my dad, my mom also played college volleyball at Bowling Green too. So having two parents that were Division I athletes that were recruited, that they kind of went through that process. My dad on a little bit different scale than my mom. Obviously at the time they didn't have like, ESPN 300 rankings and, all that kind of stuff. But, my dad is from a small town in the middle of nowhere, Ohio, basically. And he wanted to play somewhere where he's going to play right away and where his parents would be able to come to a lot of games, and he chose Bowling Green, which is crazy because looking back at it, I find these photos in my parents' basements and, whatever. And it's like, oh, Dad, is that Woody Hayes in your kitchen? Is that Joe Paterno in your kitchen? Is that, he's on visits to Miami of Florida. And I'm like, how did you pick Bowling Green? He's like, dude, I just wanted to play right away. Like, I'm like, dude, it's crazy because if you look at what that was now, it's like if you probably translate it to today, it's like probably a 4-star or 5-star recruit, and to have those kind of offers. But I think what helped the most is having them to kind of like weed out the BS. Coaches and recruiters and whatever want to, and it's like they could kind of be like, I don't know, I didn't feel it or didn't seem genuine through conversations and their sit downs and whatever. So I think having them really helped, but also them being able to point out like the daily life of a college athlete, like, okay, this is how far away, your classes are going to be from campus. This is going to be way more of a struggle for you to get across campus and look at those kind of things versus just like, man, I'm just looking at the baseball program and it's like, yeah, I'll figure out the rest later. They kind of had some more of those kind of insights.
It's funny you bring that up because, a lot of recruits that we talk to, they don't think about those things.
Mm-hmm.
And all they want to do is play at the highest level of D1 they possibly can. Or they just want to commit to the highest level of D1 they can. They don't look into playing time or, getting them ready for the next level or anything. They just care about the name across the front of the jersey. So we see that quite a bit. So it's good that you had somebody that was actually showing you other things.
Yeah, absolutely. And my mom went on to be a physical therapist. So for her, obviously a lot of schooling, and my dad left school early to, to list for the NFL draft. And so that part of them too was, my mom was super, not, I don't want to say worried, but she was super driven to make sure that I was going to be getting my schoolwork done and making sure that I think that was a priority to some degree. Obviously baseball was going to be the top priority for me, walking in there, but I wasn't going to be walking out of there with, empty handed in terms of not having a degree. So just having them to lean on with those kind of things was definitely really helpful.
Definitely. And since we're kind of talking about high school and recruiting and just that process, give your elevator pitch. So if you're talking to a high school senior that was, or junior, whatever class they were in, looking to play, big time college baseball, what's your elevator pitch for the University of Louisville? Not like Coach McDonald needs one, but let's say you had to give one to somebody. What would that be? How would you try to sell the program to them?
Man, I know it's last year is not something that's obviously going to be able to be posted on billboards, but I mean the track record that Coach Williams put together from whatever they arrived in 2007 till you can even call it now is just, I mean, the amount of draft picks, the amount of signing bonuses, the amount of conference championships, the amount of regionals, super regionals, Omaha. It's like, man, if you want to compete to actually have a chance to win a national championship, there's probably legitimately every year, there's probably 10 schools that have a real shot walking in day one. There's probably another 4 or 5 that are going to be your shot at Cinderella type teams that could make a run, a Coastal Carolina, or one of those, or Oral Roberts kind of schools that they could do it, but they say Omaha on 3 when they make a break, kind of thing, but they don't really, I don't know if they really believe that they have a shot to do it. And I think that Coach Mack and his staff have put together a program that you truly believe it, man. It's like, if we do what we're supposed to do and we take care of ourselves in the weight room and the training room and those type of things, like things on the field should come together and you actually have a legitimate chance to win a national championship. And if that's not like what your end game is, and obviously everyone wants to get drafted and play pro ball, but those things kind of fall into place based on what you do and what you put onto the field. And if you don't want to win a national championship, then don't, you don't want to commit to the hard work in the early mornings and that kind of thing. That's not a place for you for sure. But man, if you can toughen up and deal with that schedule and the day in, day out of what they have for you, I think, that's the place for you.
And it's not like I want to quote this guy often because I'm not a huge fan of his, but, Calipari talks about that with UK basketball. He's like, it's not for everybody.
Yeah.
And it's not, if you're not cut out to, for the early morning practices and grinding, if you're not committed to living that life, it's not for you.
Yeah. I do a lot of youth baseball lessons and I coach like some teams and stuff here in the off season just to fill my time and, make a little extra money here and there. But man, there's kids that I ask, or I'll ask them, if you could pick any school, where do you want to go to? And they roll off, they roll off Vanderbilt, they roll off LSU, the Tennessee, whatever. They name the top schools that every kid would name. And I'm like, if you only really knew what it takes, not just to get there, but to stay there and to be on the field there, you would change your mind in a heartbeat. Because I watch your practices. I watch the way these guys go about some of the stuff. I'm like, man, you wouldn't last half a practice with, or half a weight room session with whoever. But obviously, you got to have aspirations, but there is a reality to it. And like you said, like it is not for everyone. That's for sure.
So you talk about track record and, the long list of, accolades and awards that Dan McDonnell has put together, the long list of draft picks from McDonnell and Roger Williams. I want to go back to 2016, where you're part of what is arguably the best rotation the school's ever seen, probably one of the best rotations in the country at the time. You were in it, and the other three were Brendan McKay, Kyle Funkhauser, Drew Harrington. From the outside looking in, it looks like that rotation with Birdie at the back end of the bullpen is just an unbeatable, group of guys. What was that like for you? Did you guys kind of echo that same sentiment? Just take us through that season being a part of that group.
Yeah, I mean, that was obviously special. And we had our our fall ball. Everyone wants to be a starter. That's obviously everyone's goal, right? And we're kind of looking around. You're trying to kind of play the numbers game in your head, like, man, if it might be him, and if it's like, we know after McKay's freshman year and after what Funkhauser had done, those two are locks, right? That last Sunday spot was kind of up in the air. And as well, obviously the midweek games, in years past, we never had like a traditional, this is our midweek starter. Was kind of just by committee, who hadn't really pitched over the weekend, who was the most fresh, that kind of thing. And so it was kind of like a battle between Harrington and I between that last spot. Obviously, Drew ends up winning that last spot, goes on to be ACC Pitcher of the Year, which is obviously an incredible thing. But it's like, man, if you look at, you got your ACC Pitcher of the Year and he's pitching on Sundays, it just goes to show what you got in front of you, which was crazy. And I just kind of fell into that midweek rotation spot where I was able to get us through a lot of innings early in games and just kind of save the bullpen. So we were fresh for ACC play on weekends and, those non-conference weekend games. And, to me, it was my first chance to really be a starter and learn a routine and learn how to kind of go about it, giving me a shot for, the weekend the following year. But yeah, that group was, incredibly special. I think there's some stat between the 16 draft class and 17 draft class. So my class and the class above me was like $24 million in signing bonuses or something something out of this world. And it's like, people ask me all the time, like, obviously I had a pretty good sophomore year and they're like, wow, look at these numbers and wins and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, yeah, I threw well, don't get me wrong. But like, I had like a first rounder at first base, a second rounder at second base, in the outfield, I had first rounder, second round. Yeah, it's like everywhere you point, it's like, there's a guy that, he's going to play in the big leagues there and they haven't yet, or if they haven't played in the big leagues yet, they're going to be playing, anytime soon. So, and then not to mention, you look at a guy like Will Smith behind home plate for me. So, yes, I did have a good year, but man, it was a lot of times, man, it wasn't like, I'm going out there going to, 5 or 6 shutout with 12, 14 strikeouts. I mean, there's some really, really good defense behind me.
So with Will Smith behind the plate with you there, did you kind of have a sense that, this guy is a elite, like he is a very good catcher? Did you think at the time that this is a big league catcher?
What's crazy is, I don't know if many people know this, Will was actually he came in as an infielder. I think he was a second baseman, converted to catcher once he got on campus. Louisville, being a Louisville guy, I don't think he even had scholarship money. I think he was like a preferred walk-on or however it works. And Will is just like a silent killer, man. He's not a guy that you're going to hear much from. He's got a little bit more now that he's in LA. I think he's understanding it now, but he's not like on social media. He's just like, man, he's just like a baseball robot. Shows up, does his work, and it's just like artwork, boom, he's out. Show up again, do it the next day. And, obviously over the time, Will got better and better and better. And he just went on a crazy stretch to the last probably 6 weeks of the season that kind of jumped him from like, he's probably a day 2 pick, maybe 6th, 7th, 8th round to like man, Will might slide into the first round. Like, it's crazy what he was able to put together the last 2 months of the season to kind of solidify himself for the draft. And, and it's crazy too. Like, you look at pro ball and you know the organizations that are good, year in, year out. You have your Yankees, your Dodgers, your Red Sox, your Rays, those teams that are going to be in the mix every year. And it's like, man, like, you wonder what their player development looks like. And like, Will is just like a total living product of that. I mean, Will went from a guy who more of a contact hitter, hits for power, kind of puts the ball in the gap. And now Will's hitting 30 home runs a year at the big league level. And, probably whatever he's hitting, probably 265, 270 year in and year out. So, it's not that I ever doubted that Will would do it, but I just trusting the process of what some of those big league organizations can do in terms of player development.
You kind of touched on your draft experience a little bit. Let's talk about June of 2017. It was in the span of just a couple of weeks. You get drafted by the White Sox. You're part of the Louisville, Kentucky Super Regional, where we swept them 2-0 and punched a ticket to Omaha. Tell us about that month. Obviously, in your career, that's probably one of the best months of your life. Probably. Just walk us through that month.
Yeah, so we had the ACC tournament that year. We actually hosted in Louisville, down at Slugger Field. I started against Florida State, and I got my teeth kicked in. I want to say I maybe went like 2 1/3 or 3 1/3 or something, maybe like 5. I mean, it was something I try to forget about, but I just wasn't good. The next week, we roll into our regional, and I pitched against Radford, and the same thing. I mean, I threw like first 2 or 3 innings were fine, and I think I gave up like a grand slam. I think I ended up giving up like 5 or 6 runs. And like, I don't want to say confidence was low, but I just was like, man, I had a pretty good year. Like, what the hell is going on? Like, these last 2 weeks. And I know leading up into that UK regional, super regional, Coach Mack called me into the office and he just sat me down. He's like, man, watch the TV. And he had a highlight tape, I guess you could call it. It was just like, every strike 3 that I had from that season. I was like a 6-minute video. I'm just sitting there watching this thing. I'm like, man, what is he trying to tell me? Like, what is the point of this? And he basically just was like, man, we have all the confidence in the world in you. Despite what happened the last 2 weeks, look at the body of work. Like, you can do this. You can pitch at this level. You can do what you need to do. And he just wanted to let me know that basically that they felt confident that I was going to start the first game of the Super Regional. I think whatever it was, Friday of that year. That they felt like if I could do what I needed to do, turn it over to the bullpen, that we had Brendan going on Saturday and we can close this thing out in 2 instead of worrying about ever getting to game 3. And I was like, all right, let's go. The next day rolled out and ended up throwing pretty well and helped us win that first game. And then obviously Brendan and the rest of those guys came in the next day and just shut the door and gave us that chance to dogpile and go to Omaha. And it's crazy too, because leading up to that, or after that week leading up to the World Series was our draft. At that time, it was in the middle of the college playoffs, which is still the stupidest thing in the world. But I'm glad the way it's set up now. But like, we're in the middle of practice and Coach Mack's like, hey, come out here, second base, come here, whatever. I'm like, he's like, we're in day 2 of the draft, and he's like, the White Sox are going to take you with the next pick. Are you cool with this? Blah 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 blah. Like, I'm like, all right, let's do it. And so practice ends. We're heading over to the Marshall Center to work out. My phone rings, and I finally get the call from the agent or the scout that drafted me. And it's just kind of crazy how that all went down. I'm in the middle of practice. I'm trying to worry about winning a national championship and getting my body right and my team right for a bigger the biggest weekend of baseball in my life. But yeah, it's just kind of the way it went down. And then we obviously went into Omaha and won our first game, ran into a buzzsaw of the Florida Gators with, about 10 big leaguers on that team. And, that's just obviously an experience that I'll never forget. And, obviously we didn't end up winning the whole thing, but, it was just a lot of fun. I mean, that was, like you said, probably the best month of my baseball career that I could kind of put together. So it was a lot of fun.
I'm glad you bring up the draft being in June, because that was going to be my follow-up question, is just as a player, because as a fan, it just from the outside looking in, it never made any sense whatsoever. And as a player, I assumed everybody felt the same way, because you're on the field, you're in practice, and you're getting drafted. You really can't enjoy that moment. You really can't focus on the task at hand of the super regional or whatever you're doing, because you just got drafted.
Yeah. And it's kind of crazy because I remember some of the guys that were local, their parents were able to like, drive over from Lexington, or if they were Louisville, their parents were able to kind of come over and like celebrate a little bit. Like being from Cleveland, my mom and dad like didn't know when I was going to get drafted. And it's like a 6 hour drive. So I'm like, I don't blame them, but I was like, man, I wish I could have got to enjoy that experience with my family and like my brother. And, like, it is stupid the way that they had it. I think obviously it's a lot better now to have it after the season finally. But yeah, it is weird. I mean, I get it. Like, there's probably only 8 to 10 teams at that time that are probably still even playing baseball to, whatever. So it doesn't really affect everyone. But man, it's like the guys that are still playing, there's like a way huge goal here right in front of your face. And you're worried about, signing bonuses and, that kind of stuff. It kind of takes away from it a little bit. But yeah, I am glad that they moved it. I think it's probably heading in a better direction. It's just weird. I mean, you get drafted, then you got to still go play another week for your current team. And then you get shipped right off and you're thrown into baseball with someone else. I'm like, just a whirlwind of a couple of weeks after the draft for sure.
So, you had that crazy whirlwind of a couple weeks. So you sign your pro contract and you get going with the White Sox. Kind of were on a highest of highs in June. And then minor league baseball comes along. And was there ever like one specific moment where like got punched in the face? I'm not at Louisville anymore. Minor league life kind of sucks type thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy too because all the guys that come back to work out, that are a little older, whatever, always like, oh man, stay in school, the minor leagues. Blah, blah. I'm like, dude, shut up, like, whatever. Like, you're just like trying to be nonchalant about it. I'm like, oh, you got some money in your pocket now, like you're probably like, it's like, how could it be bad? Boy, does it like it hits you quick. I I I went to Arizona for about 3 weeks to kind of just like work out, kind of get in shape with them, build up my arm. I hadn't thrown for a couple of weeks. And my rookie ball team was in Great Falls, Montana. And like Great Falls, Montana is not, I mean, I don't know if you guys are like outdoors kind of people or like, I'm not at all. I mean, that's just not my thing. I've never gone camping. I don't intend to anytime soon. And like, if you like that kind of thing, then it was fine. But man, Great Falls, Montana was not it. We lived with like a host family with like 5 guys in a basement, and we all shared one car to go to and from the field. You have bus rides 8 hours in the middle of the night from Montana towns to Idaho towns you've never heard of, and the second you leave town, your cell phone service is out. I mean, it's just like it's a grind. Luckily, I threw pretty well there for the first 2 or 3 weeks I was there, and I was able to finish the year in low A back in the Carolinas. So made it a little bit better to finish out like the last month of this season. But yeah, the smack of reality is tough because even when I got to low A, at that point, no one's looking for roommates with a month left in the season. I got stuck sleeping on a twin blow up mattress in the kitchen of Latin House. And Latin House is what you would expect. It is I got stuck living with all the Dominicans and Cubans and whoever that basically were like, yeah, sure, come live with us. You have nowhere else to go. So it was just a culture shock for sure. I mean, right in front of your face, it happens quick. But yeah, it was the early stages of it are stuff that it's good for stories now, but in the moment, it's not great. It is not
So
great.
you quickly realize that the life of playing college baseball at the University of Louisville isn't too
Oh
bad,
man,
right?
I went from flying on private jets, like taking our bus on the tarmac up to the stairs of the plane, copping on a plane, flying off. A bus picks me up. I got Chick-fil-A waiting for me. I'm going to practice, going to the hotel for whatever good food that Coach Mundorf has ordered for Carrabba's or whatever we're eating. Man, to like hot dogs and chips between double headers. I mean, it's just it's crazy, but yeah, those are like the fun things it's good to talk about when you're out of it, but man, and when you're in it, not great.
It's
Well,
pretty rough when you're in that
Yeah.
situation real time. Yeah.
that's a pretty good segue into the next question. We've seen a couple moments where you've been pretty outspoken about the realities of minor league baseball. And Major League Baseball kind of touched on it in the last collective bargaining agreement. Have you seen any changes since that has kicked into place, or is it still the same old, same old?
I think too, as far as I understood, right, in the lower levels, everyone's like, man, once you get to double A, it's better. Once you get to triple A, it's better. So like, I kind of think I got to like that higher level of the minor leagues before I I started to, you would like the improvement started to happen. So I think a lot of what was happening already at the AA, AAA level was like kind of like what it's supposed to be. But from what I understand, obviously now like the payments and whatever, your salaries have gone up at the lower levels. And I mean, when I was in A-ball, my W-2 for the year, I remember I saw it the other day, I was laughing about it. It was like $7,400 for the entire season. I'm like, what were my paychecks? Like $500 like every 2 weeks? Like it's crazy. So like, yeah, in that sense, obviously like it's a pretty immediate impact. I know now that there's a lot of stuff that are like going to guidelines where there's like, they have to have specific, pre-game, post-game food based on nutritional standpoints, and certain snacks have to be there for the guys, and bottles of water. It's just like simple things you would think that they'd already have. Now, actually, there's like a mandate for it finally. But yeah, I mean, it definitely seems like going in the right direction. Obviously with the free housing for the minor league players on top of the salaries, that's like obviously the two biggest components to what a lot of people wanted to see happen. So everything else is just kind of icing on the cake, obviously, and in terms of getting free housing and a salary bump.
So we kind of started back your high school career, walk through your time at Louisville, and kind of catch us up to speed where we are now. Last offseason, you got traded from Chicago to San Francisco. How did you find out about that? I'm almost curious to see how guys find out, and like how's that transition been from you from one organization to the next?
Yeah, I was it was like 2 or 3 days before Christmas. I was actually walking into a store to grab like a last minute Christmas gift, and my phone was ringing from like our assistant GM, and I was like, well, like that's either good or bad. Like he doesn't call to you like chat, like I've never texted him. I just had his number because I had his number. He probably called me one time and I saved it. And he's like, hey Kate, how's it going? I'm like, how you doing? He's like, good. What are you up to? And I'm like, what am I up to? Like, what is this conversation? I was like, oh, just running into Dick's Sporting Goods, grabbing a last minute Christmas gift. He's like, all right, cool. Hey, just want to let you know, we just traded you to the Giants. And I was like, what a transition. But I was like, okay, like he just kind of gave me a little spiel about, they appreciated, that I worked hard and, whatever, that, he was always in my corner if I ever needed anything, and someone from the Giants would be reaching out to me. And that was about it. And then couple hours later, that finally heard from the Giants once the trade officially went through, or however that worked, I guess. And once I heard from him, and just like at that point, just kind of cut ties with the White Sox and move on. It's just a very strange feeling because for 5 years, it's like or 6 years, it's twice as long as I was even in college, that I was like committing to an organization, committing to a coaching staff, and all of those kind of key components to what puts together an organization. And just like that, it's like, man, it's over. You don't know those people anymore, you don't talk to those people anymore. I mean, it's just like a whole new group. It's like it is crazy how that whole situation kind of goes down. But I mean, you really do see the business side of it of sports when a trade or people get cut, and especially at the AAA level. I mean, there's every day there's guys being released and traded and stuff like that. So the lower levels, you don't see it as much. It's a lot more like college, where it's mostly your same group for a good majority of the year. But yeah, at the higher levels, it's a business for sure.
So I kind of want to switch gears here a little bit. A few fun questions to kind of wrap it up. If you follow Kate on Instagram, you check out his Instagram stories, you know that he is a grill master. The dude can do it all on the grill. Do you have a go-to dish? And what's your favorite? Just tell us about your grilling.
Yeah, no, I love so I got married in October of 21. My agency sent me a Traeger grill for like a wedding gift, and that has been like my best friend, other than my wife, obviously. It's been like my best friend for like the last 2 years, man. I have like gotten the utmost use out of that thing. I love like barbecue food. That's just like one of my favorite things. So I'm always looking at different recipes and trying different things. But I think brisket is like my favorite thing to cook. It's just like so rewarding. It's like 11, 12, 13 hours sometimes. And you can do as long as you want, I guess. But just like after prepping it and doing it, to be able to enjoy that, that's fun to me. I guess it's just like my next phase of life where I move on to grilling meat and drinking bourbon, I guess. But no, I do. I do enjoy cooking. I can enjoy cooking in the kitchen. I enjoy cooking on the grills. I'm all about it. My wife likes it too because then she doesn't have to cook, so it works out good.
Those
And
football
my
Sundays in the
wife,
McClure house are gonna be fun.
Yeah, exactly. We just make a deal. Whoever cooks, the other person's got to clean. So I'd rather cook than have to clean. So it works out good.
I said we do that too at our house, and
Yeah.
my wife bought me a Blackstone last year for Father's Day, and I've been addicted to that thing lately.
Yeah,
So
dude.
especially,
I have a Blackstone too. I'm all about it. I'm doing like we're always trying different stuff. For she's a big TikToker, so she's always seeing videos on Instagram and TikTok about like, oh, she sends it to me. We should try this, or you should make that. I'm like, fine, let's do it. I'm all about it.
you
That's
speak
all.
about your wife and your mother-in-law, your sister-in-law. They've all spent time on reality TV through the
Yeah.
years. Kind of how's that been? Like, if you all go out and about, like, do you all get people that kind of recognize her, your family? Like, what's that like being in the public?
Yeah, I mean it's funny. So we live in Pittsburgh now. Well, my wife and I, my mother-in-law, and where my wife grew up is they live right around the corner, about 10 minutes away from us. So um, we see them a lot. So we're always going out to dinner and doing stuff and going to events or whatever. And people are always coming up to them asking for pictures. Or we went to a Morgan Wallen concert last week in Pittsburgh, and some girl stopped my wife on the street and said, "Are you Riley from So Sharp?" And she said, yeah. She goes, "Oh my God, I'm a big fan. Can I get a picture with you?" So even stuff like that, it's just funny. But yeah, we stopped we were on the way home from Virginia last week. We stopped at a farmer's market in the middle of nowhere, Virginia. And some girl says to me, are you on TikTok? I said, I'm not, but my wife is. And that's probably why you recognize me. So, and she's like, "Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God." And they're freaking out. And I'm like, it is funny to see some of that stuff. But yeah, my mother-in-law and my sister-in-law cannot go anywhere without getting recognized. That is for sure.
That's funny.
Have you watched the shows?
So when my wife and I first started dating, it was like my freshman going into sophomore year of college. So, I didn't really, well, I didn't grow up I don't know anything about dance in the first place. So I didn't know anything about it, but we'd be hanging out in, dorm rooms or whatever. And like, I'd be like, "Put it on." And she's like, "No, I do not want to watch that." I'm like, "Why?" I didn't understand anything about it. She's like, "Yeah, cause they make my mom look so evil. Like, I don't want to watch that." And so, I didn't really ever watch it. But when Riley and all of her teammates, the Lady Birds, did the So Sharp show, I obviously was watching that. I was just like kind of living it. They'd have to leave. We'd be hanging out. She'd be like, "Oh, we have to go film this, or we have to go do this. We have to go to this promo for that, or whatever." So, there was a funny time where they asked because they wanted. My wife's best friend is Rose Crombie, now McMahon, Ryan McMahon's wife. And I remember they asked like if we could go out to dinner with them as part of like an episode or something. And like that, like the department shut it down hard. They're like, they are not going on that TV show. That is for the Ladybirds, and that is it. Like, so it's just kind of crazy. Just never thought in a million years that that's like what I would have like grown up and married into or whatever. But I guess just that's how it goes.
Fast forward to now, you all could have went. You could have had Jeff Ruby sponsor an NIL deal or something. You could have all just
Oh
gone to
my
Jeff
God,
Ruby for
man.
dinner, right?
The NIL thing is crazy too. I think about it all the time. It's like, man, like in the 3 years I was in school, I was there with Donovan Mitchell, Terry Rozier, Lamar Jackson, Brendan McKay, like Kelsey Worrell, like so many people that are like the faces of the sport at the time they're there. And I'm like thinking back, like, man, like not even for me, but like what kind of money could those dudes have made? Like, look at a guy like Lamar Jackson. I mean, that guy would be clearing $1 million a year, no doubt. Like you win the Heisman, like even at maybe we're Louisville where the NIL isn't as crazy as like some of the SEC schools where they have the funding for it. But man, it's like there's no way he's making less than $1 million after the year after winning a Heisman. That whole thing is crazy. But yeah, it's cool. I mean, but yeah, you're right. Shout out to Jeff Ruby's. That is like one of my favorite players. Can't go wrong there.
So we
So
kind of
kind of
touched.
last question for you. Or Aaron, you got something else?
Oh, go ahead. I'm good.
No, so we got kind of last question we've got for you tonight is we walked through your whole career, and I know you keep up with Louisville sports to this day. You're watching the football game tonight. What are your thoughts on the 2024 baseball team? I know, like we talked about earlier, they kind of had a tough couple years, but
Yeah,
what do you think about this upcoming season?
I'm excited. I know obviously Mac and Coach Williams aren't necessarily like, you know, fresh into the coaching game. So they've already have a established way of recruiting and established way of coaching, which I think worked for a long while. And now that there's a change in the landscape in terms of the transfer portal and the NIL and a lot of that stuff, I don't want to say they were opposed to it, but I think that they're just now kind of really getting to take advantage of it. It looks like they're doing a good job of bringing in some transfer portal guys that maybe aren't going to be like your Tommy White transfer portal kind of guys, but D2 player of the year, those kind of guys, or maybe they deserve a shot to play at a bigger school. And if they can do it and they don't got to go pay them 500 grand in NIL money, it's like, man, it's worth a shot. So I'm excited to see what the transfer portal brings and their kind of the adjustments that they're making now to the recruiting landscape. And, it's funny as I don't even know if I'm allowed to say this, but like I do a lot of youth lessons and things here and like do a lot of coaching. I'm like always texting, Coach Snyder or any of the coaches, man, take a look at this guy or just get a look at him. I can send you some video, however it goes. Cause it's like, man, the recruiting is just so different than even 5 years ago what it was. I mean, they come watch you at a showcase, you come to a camp, you're good enough, boom, here's an offer. Now it's like you have to landscape all of college baseball for the chance that some kid might enter the transfer portal. You got to be one of the first couple of schools to jump on him. Otherwise, boom, he's gone to somewhere else that quick. So it is definitely changing and evolving. I think it's good for the athlete in terms of like, there's a little bit more freedom. You don't have to commit to one place. And if you don't like it or you don't get to play, you're stuck. And I think that part of it's nice. I think it's definitely harder on the coaches and harder on the programs because you're committing all this time and recruiting to some kid and then boom, he's gone in 8 months because he didn't get to play a lot or whatever the reason might be. So there's obviously going to have to be a fine balance between the NIL and the transfer portal, a lot of this stuff that's going on. But it does definitely seem like it's heading in a direction that's way different than what I went through in 2013 when I was being recruited. And so,
I definitely think the players should get a piece of the pie. I mean, they're the face of the teams. I agree with that 100%. But you touched on something a lot of people don't, is the coaching staff when they recruit. They have their next 2, 3, 4 years planned out of who they think is going to play each position. Mm-hmm. And somebody comes in the freshman, they don't play because they've got a senior in front of them. Well, they don't play, so they get mad and they leave. But the coaching staff, they had plans for them to start next year. So now we've got to find somebody to replace them. So it's a whole new world now.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it too, I mean, not to sound like the old man on the porch kind of thing, but it's like a lot of it is just like the travel ball generation that like what we're looking at now is just so wild where it's like kids are jumping from team to team to team to team that it's like, well, why can't I do that in college if I don't, or if it's like, and I think that's hard because it's hard to build a program and a foundation on kids that you're bringing in when every year you have to go bring in a kid from another school because the kids you spent time recruiting just jump ship. I think then that was a really impressive part about the time that I was in school is obviously didn't have the transfer portal where it was that easy to transfer, but I think my freshman class came in with I think 15 had committed, 2 or 3 got drafted out of high school. I think there was about, let's call it 12 or 13. I think I finished my 3 years with 11 of those guys. Just again, Coach Mack and Coach Williams and those guys doing a great job in terms of recruiting guys that are going to stick to the plan, stick with the program, and not want to give up. But yeah, it's different. I mean, it is what it is now, and that's part of it. But I don't know. I'm looking forward to hopefully them, kind of righting the ship. Obviously, they started off hot and they were who Louisville baseball was, and they kind of just hit a rut and they weren't able to really get out of it, and kind of unfortunately kind of sunk the season for them. But I think getting some guys healthy and seeing what this transfer portal can do for them will be exciting.
We're definitely looking forward to it because it's a lot easier for us to sit behind this microphone and talk about it when they're winning. So yeah, I know
and it's just hard because I know what the coaching staff and the support staff put into that program, and to have them, not have success is frustrating because for the 3 years that I was there and the 3 or 4 years before I got there, I followed it. And it's like, they don't have those kind of years. So it definitely makes it tough on them. But I know that obviously they're just trying to go get the next best guy and do the best thing that they can on the field. So I really hope that they can, turn this thing around and get it back to where it's supposed to be.
I think we're all in the same boat there. We're ready to see Louisville baseball get back to the national spotlight where they have been. So
absolutely.
But Kade, we really appreciate you coming on with us tonight and taking some time out of your evening watching college football and the NFL kickoff tonight. So just appreciate you coming on, and good luck with the rehab, and hopefully you get back on the field as soon as possible.
Appreciate it, man. Hey, good news. The Cards just covered the spread. So as long as they don't give it touchdowns, well, we're all in a good spot tonight.
And we can bet in Kentucky now. So remember that.
Yeah, I'm in Pennsylvania. We've had sports gambling for like 2 years, so this has been awesome. I love football season. Just just get to sit down and watch my guys and have a little vetted interest.
I hear you. Well, I appreciate you, Kade, and anytime you want to hop on, we'd love to have you.
Appreciate you guys. Thank you, man.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks.